Welcome back to our study in the book of Romans. This is the Sonship Review Part 7, and this is Session 30. And it really is. God, what we left off looking at those couple of passages in Psalm 105 and 106. God, here's what the Scripture is going to talk about. Saved the people from the man that... In fact, let me just keep reading this in Psalm 106 because we cut that off in the middle and I need you to see the rest of that. So let's start back at verse 7 and we'll read the whole thing. Our fathers understood not thy wonders in Egypt. They remembered not the multitude of thy mercies, but provoked him at the sea, even at the Red Sea. Nevertheless, he saved them for his name's sake, that he might make his power to be known. He rebuked the Red Sea also, and it was dried up. So he led them through the depths as through the wilderness, and he saved them. Now this is important. And he saved them from the hand of him that hated them, and redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. Start looking at this verse. You know, we read these kinds of verses over and over, and we think what God is doing is just repeating the same thing he just said. He saved them from the hand of him that hated them, redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. If you think that's repetition, here's what you would say. That's the poetry of the King James Version. Those are two different issues right there that's happening. He is, and by the way, just think about, I would ask you to do it, but we need to move on. We're never going to get through this. This was on the kids' sheet. Oh, I just hate that I'm not doing this. He saved them from the hand of him. This is a single individual that hated them. And that is Pharaoh. The second one, and redeemed them. Did he save them from Pharaoh? Sure did. But he redeemed them. Remember what I told you to set this thing up? They had become Satan's possession. So what is he about to do? He's about to redeem them from the hand of the enemy. And who would that be? Yeah, that would be Satan. You've got a connection, yes, between Pharaoh and Satan, but this verse is actually talking about both of them. And so what God is going to do is he is going to harden Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh is going to be provoked into doing something. You already know what that is. I'm just not identifying it right now. And God means for all of this action to wind up at a particular end. In other words, there's somewhere he wants all this to lead. And in order to get Satan to do what he wants him to do, God is going to infuriate him and prod him and provoke him and all of these things to goad him into taking some particular actions, especially an action that Satan has been given the power of. Because at that time, Satan was in control of the power of death. By the way, there's something else here, and we'll talk about this. Look at verse 9. He rebuked the Red Sea also. That's a strange... People look at that and they go, boy, that King James uses some awfully strange terminology. It just means, they look at that and they go, he just parted the waters. Does rebuke mean part the waters? What is a rebuke? All right, it can be a scolding. Huh? A put down. Who would be someone? I'm not saying name them, but who gets a rebuke? Okay, a person gets a rebuke, and what would be about that person? If you're rebuking someone, it's because, how do they stand in connection with you?
They've done something against you that they know better.
Okay, they've done something against you. Everybody's saying it. My question is just too broad. A rebuke is always intended for someone who is opposed to, right? And look, I know that all those things that we said about rebuke are right, and I'm not correcting that. But what I'm saying is when he says he rebuked the Red Sea also, then there is something about the Red Sea that stands in opposition to what God is doing. And so it's not just he parted the waters, he rebuked the Red Sea. Those words are in there for a reason. I want to show, that's why I'm saying to you in the last session, there's way more here than just parting the waters. There's way more than that. What you're about to see is something very stupendous in the Word, and almost nobody talks about it. But you have to look at the words and understand the meanings of the words that are being used. Now, look, when they went into the wilderness, they doubted. They doubted all along, didn't they? They saw the plagues and they got to the Red Sea, and what did they do? They doubted, and oh, would to God we were in Egypt. God parts the Red Sea, they go across on dry ground. When the spies go into the land and come back, what do the people do? They doubted. They heard the report of the giants. I mean, you just watched God part the Red Sea, for goodness sake. And now you're doubting again. God, they're wandering in the wilderness and they need water, and what do? They doubted. Now, I know I'm painting a pretty bad picture here, but I got to tell you, this is a people that learn slow. This must be the educable slow class. Not this and not Israel. All right, now.
Mike, when it says also, is he talking about the Red Sea and the children of Israel? Is that also?
Because you're thinking about before that when it says they provoked him at the Red Sea. Yeah, he rebuked the Red Sea. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying he rebuked them and he rebuked the Red Sea, and that's right. Yes. All right, now let me take you over to Psalm 78. Yeah, I mean 106. Why in the world? I don't know why this isn't on the PowerPoint right. Let me go one more. I guess I'm showing you the answer to that thing I showed you a while ago. Him that hated them is Pharaoh, and the enemy is Satan. Now Psalm 78. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. And they tempted God in their heart by asking meat for their lust. Yea, they spake against God. They said, and now look at this. Ruby talked to me before the session today, and she said, I was listening again to what we did last week, and you were talking about Psalm 23. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Look at what Psalm 78 says that the nation asked as they're out there in the wilderness. Yea, they spake against God. They said, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Isn't that a coincidence? That's the terminology and by the way, do you know, just so you know what's going on here, how did God feed them when they were wandering in the wilderness? How did he feed them? With manna. And you know what they did is they got tired of manna. So you know what they did? They said, can't we have, look, and they tempted God in their heart by asking meat for their lust. They said, we're sick of manna. Every day we got manna. Can we have some meat? I did not include it in the notes, and I certainly didn't intend to go off and talk about it. But God gave them meat. Does anybody remember what he gave them? Well, close. Quail. Quail. Does anybody remember how deep the quail fell? Waist high. That is a bunch of birds. And then God makes a statement. He says, you want meat? I'll give it to you till it comes out your nostrils. That's when I'm thinking, you know what? I think y'all have provoked him. Exactly the word that the Bible used, right? They provoked him at the Red Sea. They provoked him in the wilderness. They just can't seem to help themselves. This is the people that read the law and said, we got this. Are you kidding me? All right. Now, that terminology, that should have taken you back to Psalm 23 right there. Anyway, just to say, Psalm 78 now, that's 17, 18, and 19. Here's 20. Behold, he smote the rock, that the waters gushed out, and the streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide flesh for his people? Now you see what they're doing? This is them talking. They're going, yeah, he could give us water out of a rock, but can he give us meat? These folks are just not going to be happy no matter what. Now, verse 21, therefore the Lord heard this and was wroth. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel, because they believed not in God and trusted not in His salvation. You understand that so far what he's saying is, have I not demonstrated to you since the time that you were in Egypt how I could do those things for you which you could not do for yourself? That you could depend on me in all of this? And yet for all of those things, they still didn't believe and trust in His salvation. Verse 23, though He had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven and had rained down manna upon them to eat and had given them of the corn of heaven. This next verse is amazing. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Now, that meat, as you said just a moment ago, turns out to be quail. Now, I'm going to take you to Psalm 74. Remember last week where we talked about that remnant that was supposed to flee into Israel, who dwell solitarily in the wood? You remember that? They're alone out there. Don't tell anybody. Micah chapter 7. Now, Psalm 74. O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Remember thy congregation, which thou hast purchased of old, the rod of thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed, this Mount Zion, wherein thou hast dwelt. That is part of the cry of the believing remnant. They're going, God, where are you? Why does this keep going? Why hasn't something changed about this? We'll pick it up in verse 9. We see not our signs. There is no more any prophet, neither is there any among us that any that knoweth how long. In other words, they're going, how long is this going to keep going? Nobody knows how long it's going to go. God, where are you? Verse 10, O God, how long shall the adversary reproach? Shall the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? Why withdrawest thou thy hand, even thy right hand? Pluck it out of thy bosom. They're going, why aren't you doing something? Do you see what they're saying here? Now this is the remnant that's doing that. And they're wondering, why isn't God coming to help us? What's happening here? Now, they're asking why, and it's Micah and the other minor prophets that answer that question. Where are you? How long? Why aren't you doing something? That's the job of the minor prophets. I'm trying to get you to fit that together. So it's important for them to understand those minor prophets. And the remnant are going to have to, by the way, I'm just saying this as an aside, they're going to have to confess something in order to get out from under the fifth course of punishment. They need to understand the why so they can actually make that confession. Back to Psalm 74 now, and this is going to be, that's verse 11, so now we pick it up in verse 12. For God is my King of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. Thou breakest the heads of Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Now that is chock full of stuff. We need to keep reading, but look, let me just show you a couple things before we keep reading here. You did divide the sea by thy strength. Now we understand about the dividing of the Red Sea. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. We're going to talk about that. Not only that, thou breakest the heads of Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. When you look at that, you know what it looks like? It looks like you took Leviathan and you killed him and you hacked him up and you gave him to the people to be their meat. Isn't that what that looks like? I'm going to show you exactly what that is. Then when you read that terminology, you'll go, oh, that's what that means. Well, let's keep reading this passage. Thou didst cleave the fountain and the flood. Thou driest up mighty rivers. The day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun. He's taken them back to creation here. Why is he doing that? Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. When did God first do that? Remember, he provided for those seasons back in Genesis, didn't he? Well, all right. Here's the first point I'm trying to make to you. Does everybody get it? That there is more going on here than just them coming out of Egypt and going to the Promised Land. There's a whole lot of things that are going on here in addition to that. One of those things is a battle with a dragon. And then the reference to the creation and the dividing of the waters. I'm going to show you something about this battle. Let me just kind of set the stage for that. Because of the way this is laid out. By the way, who's the dragon that God is having battle with? That'd be Satan. Remember Revelation 12? I saw a great red dragon, remember? Over that's Satan. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. That's why we think a third of the angels followed Lucifer in his rebellion. He says, thou didst, when he's talking about the creation and all that battle with the adversary, that begins in the book of Genesis. That battle with that dragon continues all the way through, and it doesn't end until the second advent of Jesus when he comes to destroy him. This is talking about the scope of that battle and the dividing of the Red Sea and the rebuking of the Red Sea and them going across on dry ground. I know we haven't explained that yet, but we will. That's all part of this battle that in this stage is provoking the adversary into something. God is, I'm not doing it justice, but I'm hoping by the time I'm through that you'll be able to understand that everything that is going on here is goading Satan into a rage that is supposed to culminate in something. So, look at verse 13. Let's just, well, I don't know why I did that. Oh, because this is a deal for the kids. That's why this is popping up. This is supposed to be for them in their thing here. What is God doing by taking Israel across the Red Sea? He is battling with the dragon, with Satan. Where does that battle begin? Genesis 1. I already put this on the board for you, right? And where does that battle end? The second advent of Jesus Christ. That's the scope of that battle. This is happening in the midst of that. So now, in Psalm 74, look with me in verse 13. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. The sea here, and if you have your Bible open there, or even that sea is the Red Sea. Not the Mediterranean, and not just waters in general. And the waters are not talking about peoples. This is talking about the same sea that he rebuked. This is the Red Sea. And when God, listen to this carefully, when God divided the waters, he exposed some creatures that were down there. If I could take you back, I'll just show it to you. It's plural. It's dragons. Look at verse 13. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength. Thou breakest the heads of the dragons, plural, right? In the waters. Now, Leviathan is singular. He is a dragon. But there are other dragons that are there in the Red Sea. Now you're getting an idea about why God is rebuking the Red Sea. Because it now contains those who are working with Satan, trying to promote his agenda in the world. And so, what God is doing is He is setting things up here to deal with. He's going to deal with Satan, but before He deals with Satan, He's going to deal with Pharaoh, He's going to deal with those dragons, and then He's going to deal with the adversary. So all this is being set up for this conflict. And so, in fact, you can do that. Just think back to the plagues that were falling on the land of Egypt. In the beginning, when Moses, remember when they threw, Moses and Aaron came in, put the rod down, what happened to their rod? Turned into a serpent. But Pharaoh calls in his magicians, and what do? Same thing. Throw down the rods and become serpent. Here's some funny one. I don't understand why Pharaoh does this. But when Moses has the water in Egypt turn to blood, I don't know if you know this, but it's right there in the text, Pharaoh calls in his magicians, and guess what they do? They duplicate the same. I'm thinking, you idiot! Why would you want to make that worse? It's like helping God judge you. What is that? The first of those. Milt, can you check on that door back there? I don't know if it just blew open or if someone's there. But in the beginning of those things, the magicians of Egypt duplicate the miracles. But little by little, Satan is unable to have those men match the power that's evident through Moses and Aaron. Not able to do that. Take a look at this. The C. Sorry, it's on the kids' deal. I was making it easy for them. All right. Sorry. And once again, those dragons are the creatures in the Red Sea, and I'm associating them with those devils that are working with Satan. We're going to have a lot more to say about that. Here's Exodus 8. And the Lord said unto Moses, say unto Aaron, stretch out thy rod and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians, now see, this is the response. I'm thinking, you guys have got to be idiots. Really? You want more lice? This is just not as... I didn't think Israel was especially bright. The Egyptians, you know what, raised the bar on dumbness to a whole new level, and to me. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice. But look, for the first time, but they could not. So were there lice upon man, upon beast. Then the magicians said unto Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. So there came a time when Satan had to lay aside his human tools, and now he's going to have to utilize his own power if he's going to annihilate Israel. So here's what's happening. I'm just going to give it to you. What have I got left here? Okay. So let me set this up, because this is where we're going in the third session. When God takes them across the Red Sea, He is not, like I said, He's not just saying, come down here to the Red Sea and let me show you something really neat. He is taking them into... Now, you already know the Red Sea occupies an adversarial role with God, because it's being utilized by Satan as a stronghold. as such, God is going to take the people not only into the area where Satan really has power, but into a very particular place in the Red Sea where Satan is able to exercise that power of death. You're going to see this. And Satan has got to be just wringing his hands in joy, thinking, with everything that's gone wrong for me here, with the plagues and with all of this, these people are backed up to the Red Sea, and God now has gotten Moses there to open that thing up at the very place that is at the heart of my power. You'll see this in a moment. And he's got to be thinking, ha ha! I'm going to wipe them all out. But God does something that doesn't allow Satan to exercise that power. He is furious. So is Pharaoh. So as soon as the pillar between them lifts, Pharaoh and his army come charging right down. I am not talking about the waters here in any of this. Not yet. I'm not talking about the waters. I'm not talking about God heaped up the waters on both sides. That's exactly what the Scripture says. But there was something else that God did that allowed His people to pass right over, and Satan couldn't kill them the way he wanted to. But when Pharaoh and his army came down, God undid what He did to protect Israel, and the thing backfires on Satan. And not only do Pharaoh and his army drown, but they become the victims of what he meant for Israel. I want you to understand that what's happening here is so infuriating to him. And he's not forgetting it. It's not like 500 years later Satan doesn't remember it. Oh, he remembers it. He is just beside himself about it. So when we come back, we're going to pick this up. And again, we'll return to Psalm 106. I sure wish I'd have had you read those two Psalms. We'll return to Psalm 106 and we'll pick all this up, because I want you to see what Satan had planned, what God did to thwart that plan, and how the whole thing backfired on Satan. You know what it reminds me of? And I can say this in the last 20 seconds. It reminds me of Satan boasting that I am so wise, there's no secret God can hide from me. And then Paul showing up and going, let me show you a secret that God kept hidden from the foundation of the world. Caught in his own craftiness. That started right back there. This is an amazing